The streets of Duskvale were wet with rain, and the moon cast silver light over the cobblestones like frozen tears. Mist crawled along the alleys, curling around crooked signposts and iron gates. In this part of the city, humans and vampires coexisted uneasily. Most humans feared the creatures of the night, and most vampires preferred to remain hidden. But tonight, fear and shadow seemed closer than ever, and Alara felt it pressing against her like a weight she could not shake. Alara moved quickly, her pale cloak brushing the damp stone. Her eyes, faintly glowing under the moonlight, darted from shadow to shadow. She kept her head low, wishing invisibility was not just a dream. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, a reminder of her fragile state, for she had been forced to subsist on scraps for weeks. Her clan's curse made sunlight painful, weak, and humiliating if ever she was caught outside in the wrong hour. Tonight she had hoped to find a quiet corner, a hidden doorway where she could escape notice. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. From the shadows ahead, a group of humans appeared. They were laughing, the sound sharp and cruel, cutting through the mist like a blade. Alara froze, her heart pounding. She recognized the faces. These were the same bullies who had mocked her at the market, the same ones who whispered rumors about the pale girl who drinks strange things. Their eyes glimmered with malice, and each step they took toward her made her stomach churn with fear. "Hey, look who it is!" one of them sneered, a boy taller than the rest with a crooked grin. "The little vampire thinks she's too good for us." Ilara's instinct told her to run, but her legs refused. She knew that any sudden movement might provoke them, and she had little strength left to defend herself. One of the girls stepped forward, picking up a piece of stale bread from the ground. "Maybe she'll eat this. Like she belongs on the floor," she taunted, tossing it toward Ilara's feet. Ilara's face burned with shame. She crouched slightly, ready to bend down, but something inside her stiffened. She would not give them the satisfaction. Not yet. "Eat it," the boy laughed, nudging her. "Or maybe you'll cry instead." Tears threatened her eyes. She hated the weakness that came with being small, pale, and different. But before she could decide what to do, a voice broke through the cruel laughter. "Hold my beer." It was a human voice, deep, steady, full of reckless courage. The group of bullies turned, their laughter faltering. A young man stepped into the moonlight, his hair damp from the rain, eyes glowing faintly with determination. He was broad-shouldered, with the confident stance of someone who did not fear trouble. Alara blinked. She had never seen him before, yet somehow she felt an inexplicable safety in his presence. The bullies scowled, annoyed that their easy prey had gained an unexpected champion. "You're making a mistake," the tallest boy warned. "This doesn't concern you." "I said hold my beer," the young man repeated, his voice calm but firm. He lifted his hands slightly, not in aggression, but in a gesture that promised defense. The bullies hesitated. They were confident in their numbers, sure of their dominance. But this human, he did not seem afraid. And in Duskvale, fear was the sharpest weapon anyone could wield. For a moment, silence hung like a frozen cloud. Then one of the bullies moved closer, testing. "You're crazy," he spat. The young man smiled faintly, and it was not a friendly smile. It was a smile that said he had faced craziness before and survived. "Maybe," he said, "but I've also seen what happens when you push someone too far." Ilara's heart thudded in her chest. Could she really trust a human? Her instincts screamed caution. Humans were unpredictable, and even those who acted kindly could be cruel if provoked. But something about him made her feel seen. Not as a creature to be mocked, but as someone who mattered. The tension thickened. Rain dripped from the rooftops, forming tiny rivers along the stone, and the mist swirled as if nature itself was holding its breath. Then the boy took a small step forward, and the air seemed to crackle with energy, not magical exactly, but powerful in a way that made the bullies falter. Ilara realized she was trembling, but it was not from fear. It was from the strange thrill of hope, of daring to believe that maybe, just maybe, someone would stand for her. The tallest bully lunged forward, trying to grab her cloak, but the young man moved faster, stepping in between them with a precision that left Ilara astonished. He didn't strike, he didn't push, he simply positioned himself so that any attack would hit him first. "You don't touch her," he said quietly. "Not tonight. Not ever." The bullies laughed nervously, uncertain. This was new. No human had ever interfered in their games. Ilara saw a flicker of fear cross their faces, just a flicker, and it was enough. They backed off, muttering curses, before disappearing into the mist. Ilara exhaled, a shuddering sound she barely recognized as a laugh. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. The young man turned toward her. "Ilara, right?" he asked. He knew her name. How? She didn't answer immediately, not trusting yet, but he continued. "I know what it's like to be judged for what you are. I've seen it in the streets of Duskvale. You don't deserve that." Ilara's eyes widened. How could he understand? Humans usually avoided or attacked her kind without hesitation. She wanted to step back, to retreat into the safety of shadows, but something in him called her forward. "What's your name?" she finally asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Kale," he said with a small, easy grin, "and I think we just found ourselves an interesting night." Ilara's lips quivered. She had never had anyone, stand up for her like this. It was as if the weight of countless nights of humiliation lifted slightly. But the feeling was accompanied by something more dangerous: curiosity. Why would a human risk himself for a vampire? Kale extended his hand, not threatening, but protective. Ilara hesitated, then took it. A strange warmth spread from his touch, not like sunlight, but something softer, gentler. Her heart, long used to hiding in shadows, felt a strange stirring. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said. "Not in this part of the city. There are people who would take advantage of your kind." Ilara nodded, unsure how to respond. Her clan had always warned her about humans, about their unpredictability and cruelty. Yet here was one, standing under the same moonlight, willing to face danger for her sake. It felt wrong, and yet it felt right. As they walked together through the misted streets, Kale explained that he often roamed the city at night, learning its secrets, helping where he could. Ilara listened, hesitant but intrigued. She noticed the way he watched the shadows, the careful way he moved, and the quiet confidence that seemed to radiate from him. Suddenly, a sharp sound echoed from the alley behind them, a metallic scrape, a whisper of movement. Ilara froze and Kale's eyes narrowed. "Bullies?" she asked. He shook his head. Something else. Something older. Ilara felt a chill run down her spine. In Duskvale, the night held many secrets. Creatures older than the city itself lurked where the mist was thickest, and she had learned to respect fear. From the darkness, a figure emerged, tall, cloaked in black, eyes glowing faintly with crimson light. Ilara recognized the signs immediately. A vampire of the council, watching, judging, perhaps deciding her fate. Kale stepped in front of her, placing himself between Ilara and the stranger. "I think you're looking at the wrong person," he said. The vampire council member's gaze lingered on Kale, a flicker of interest, and perhaps amusement, crossing his features. "A human daring to protect a fledgling," he murmured. "How bold." Ilara's heart pounded. She wanted to hide, to melt into the shadows, but Kale's presence gave her strength. Not physical strength, but the kind that made her feel she might survive, that she might fight, that she might matter. The council vampire lingered for a heartbeat, then vanished into the mist, leaving a silence heavy with threat and possibility. Ilara exhaled, unsure if she was relieved or terrified. Kale glanced at her. "You're stronger than you know," he said softly. "And maybe, with the right friend, you don't have to be alone anymore." Ilara felt a strange warmth at his words. For the first time in her life, she dared to believe it might be true. But as the city whispered and the rain continued to fall, she realized the danger was far from over. Being noticed, especially by someone like Kale, meant the world of shadows would soon take notice, and not all of it would be kind. The night seemed endless, the mist curling tighter around them, as if the city itself held its breath. And in the distance, another shadow moved, larger, older, waiting. A storm was coming, one that might change everything. Ilara took a deep breath, feeling fear and hope entwined. She glanced at Kale, who offered a small, determined smile, and for a fleeting moment she felt as if she could face whatever was coming. And in the silent alley under the silver moonlight, she realized this human, this reckless, brave, infuriating human, had just changed her life forever. The night held its secret still, but Ilara and Kale walked forward together, unaware of the trials waiting in the darkness, unaware of the forces that would soon draw them into a web of power, mystery, and a connection neither had expected. The mist hung thick over Duskvale as Ilara followed Kale through narrow alleys, her cloak damp with rain, her mind swirling with confusion. She could still feel the heat of fear and hope tangled together, a strange new feeling that both excited and terrified her. The encounter with the bullies and the council vampire had shaken her, but it also ignited something deep inside, a sense that maybe she could be more than what the curse had made her. Kale led her to a quiet corner of the city, a hidden courtyard overgrown with ivy and lit by the soft glow of lanterns that flickered like fireflies. It was a place where humans rarely ventured, and vampires rarely lingered. Ilara's senses, always alert, immediately picked up the faint hum of magic in the air. "You can rest here for a moment," Kale said, his voice calm. "No one will find you here tonight." Ilara nodded, unsure what to say. She wanted to ask him why he risked himself for her, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she studied him. Kale was not like anyone she had ever met. There was no fear in his eyes, only determination and a quiet kindness that made her pulse quicken. "I don't understand," she said finally. "Why would you help me? Humans usually—" Her voice trailed off. "They usually what?" he asked, tilting his head. "Attack, mock, run away," she said, shivering slightly. Kale nodded slowly. "Some do, some don't. I've seen enough cruelty to know it's not the only way, and I've seen enough fear to know that courage is rare." He smiled faintly. "You had courage tonight, too." Ilara felt a flush rise to her cheeks. Courage. She had always thought of herself as weak, a creature to be hidden and humiliated. And yet, she had stood there, even if trembling, even if barely holding back tears. She had stood. The courtyard was silent, except for the distant drip of rain and the occasional rustle of leaves. The city outside seemed a world away, a dangerous place filled with shadows and whispers. Yet here, with Kale, the shadows felt different, less threatening, almost protective. Suddenly, a soft, almost musical voice broke the quiet. "Ilara!" She stiffened. The voice was smooth, commanding, yet not unkind. From the shadows of the courtyard, a figure stepped forward, tall and elegant, draped in a cloak of deep purple. Eyes glimmered with crimson light, the unmistakable mark of the Vampire Council. Cale immediately moved slightly in front of her, placing a protective hand near her shoulder. "Who are you?" he asked, his tone steady. The council member smiled, a faint, mysterious curl of the lips. "I am Seraphine of the council," she said. "I have come to see why one of our fledglings has drawn the attention of a human." Ilara's heart pounded. I didn't mean—" "You did nothing wrong, child," Seraphine interrupted, her voice softening slightly. "But humans are dangerous. They do not understand our ways, our rules. And yet this one—" Her gaze flicked to Cale. "He is unusual." Cale straightened. "I don't mean harm," he said. "I just couldn't let them hurt her." Seraphine's eyes lingered on him as if weighing the truth of his words. "Perhaps." She nodded slowly. "But this cannot continue. You, human, and you, fledgling, are now part of a story older than either of you can imagine. The city watches, and the balance must be preserved." Ilara felt a cold shiver run down her spine. She had heard stories of the council's power. Ancient vampires who ruled from the shadows, deciding who could live and who could die. Yet here, Seraphine did not seem cruel. She seemed curious, intrigued. Cale, sensing her fear, gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. "Whatever this is, we'll face it together," he said quietly. Seraphine tilted her head. "Together, perhaps. But beware, fledgling. Your choices now may bind you in ways you do not yet understand." With a final, unreadable look, she stepped back into the shadows, disappearing into the mist like smoke. Ilara exhaled shakily. "What did she mean?" she whispered. "That you're more important than you think," Cale said simply, "and that someone powerful is already watching." Ilara's mind raced. She had always thought her life small, insignificant, and weak. But now she felt the weight of expectation pressing down, and for the first time, she wondered if maybe she could rise above it. The night stretched on as Cale and Ilara talked. He told her about his life in Dusk Vale, about nights spent exploring, learning the city's secrets, helping those who could not help themselves. She listened, captivated, the tension of earlier slowly easing, replaced by a strange warmth she could not name. But the peace did not last. A sudden cold wind swept through the courtyard, carrying with it a scent that made Ilara stiffen. Blood, ancient and strong, mixed with something darker, something malevolent. Cale's eyes narrowed. "They're close," he murmured. "Something older than the council itself." Ilara's pulse quickened. She had heard stories of the old vampires, creatures from before the city, beings of terrible power who walked unseen, shaping history in shadows. And now, one of them was near. From the mist, a figure emerged, taller than any human or fledgling vampire. Its eyes glowed with a strange, unnatural light, and its presence seemed to bend the air around it. Ilara felt fear, the kind that made her stomach twist and her heart race, but she did not step back. She could feel Cale behind her, steady and unwavering, and it gave her courage. The figure spoke, its voice low and resonant, like a bell tolling in a cathedral. "So, this is the human who dared intervene?" Cale stepped forward. "I did what was right," he said firmly. "No one should be treated like that." The ancient vampire's gaze swept over Ilara. "And you, fledgling, you have drawn attention. Attention that may not be safe." Ilara's hands clenched. She hated feeling powerless, yet she knew the truth of the words. She had been noticed, and that notice could be dangerous. But she could not let fear control her. Not anymore. "Why me?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "Why now?" The vampire's eyes softened slightly. "Because courage is rare, and the city has not seen it in centuries. And because sometimes a choice made in kindness can change everything. Cale glanced at her, his expression unreadable, but his grip on her hand was firm. Ilara felt a strange bond forming, not just between them, but with the fate that seemed to swirl around them both. The ancient vampire inclined its head. Remember this night, fledgling. Remember who stands with you and who waits in the shadows. For soon you will be tested. And then, as silently as it had appeared, the figure vanished into the mist, leaving the courtyard empty but heavy with a sense of impending change. Ilara exhaled slowly. Her heart still raced, but she felt something else as well. Determination. She could not go back to being weak, to hiding in shadows, to letting fear define her. She had tasted courage tonight, and it was intoxicating. Cale gave her a small, encouraging smile. "You're stronger than you know," he said softly. "And maybe, together we can face whatever comes next." Ilara's lips curved in a faint smile. She did not know if she could fully trust humans or even herself, but something inside told her that this human, reckless, brave, infuriating, was someone she could rely on. Maybe even someone she could learn to care for. They spent the rest of the night planning, speaking in hushed tones, careful to avoid attracting attention. Ilara learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. And Cale, in turn, began to understand the complexities of vampire life, the restrictions, the rules, and the hidden power struggles that governed their world. As dawn approached, the mist began to thin, revealing the city in muted shades of gray and silver. Ilara knew that their respite was temporary. The city would awaken, and with it, new challenges, new threats, and new choices. And yet, for the first time in her life, she felt hope. She had someone by her side, someone who had risked everything to protect her. And maybe, just maybe, they could change the course of their fates together. But as the first rays of sunlight touched the rooftops, a shadow lingered still, high above the city, watching, waiting. Its eyes glimmered with a quiet malice, and Ilara had the sinking feeling that the trials were only beginning. The city of Duskvale lay beneath a pale, silvery dawn. Mist still clung to the cobblestones, curling around street lamps and iron railings. But the morning brought no peace. Ilara could feel it in the air, a heavy electric tension that made her skin prickle. Somewhere above, the shadow from the previous night lingered, unseen yet unmistakably present. She walked beside Cale, their steps quiet on the wet stone. The bond between them had grown stronger overnight, unspoken yet powerful. Ilara had discovered that courage could take root in the most unlikely places, and Cale had realized that the world was far more complex than he had imagined. Together, they were stronger. Yet both knew that the coming trials would test them beyond anything they had faced before. "Where do we start?" Ilara asked, her voice low. "If the council is involved, and that shadow—" She trailed off, unwilling to name the unknown. Cale's eyes were steady. "We find the source. Whoever is behind this, they've been watching too long. We need to understand why they care about you, and why they've noticed me." Ilara nodded, though a shiver ran through her. Humans and vampires rarely crossed paths, and even rarer was a human who stood up to both bullies and council members. Cale had done both, and somehow she knew he would continue to stand, no matter what. They moved through the city, following the subtle signs left by ancient magic. Ilara sensed the traces in the air, the faint hum that marked power older than the city itself. It led them to an abandoned cathedral at the edge of Duskvale. Its stained glass windows were shattered, and the roof had caved in years ago, but the stone still whispered of old rituals, of bloodlines and pacts that shaped centuries. "This place," Ilara said softly, It's old. Very old. Cale nodded. Exactly. And I think whoever's behind this is tied to it. Inside, the cathedral was dark, shadows pooling in every corner. Alara's senses heightened, picking up movement she could not yet see. They stepped carefully, the sound of their footsteps muted by the thick dust and broken stone. Then, a figure emerged from the far side of the hall, a vampire but not like any Alara had encountered. This one radiated authority, a presence so intense that it pressed against her like wind before a storm. Its eyes, deep and red, glimmered with both age and amusement. "Ah," the vampire said, voice like velvet wrapped in steel. "So, the fledgling arrives with her human champion. Bold, aren't we?" Ilara felt her pulse quicken but did not step back. "Why are you following me?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear rising inside. The vampire smiled faintly. "Not following, child. Observing, testing. There is potential here, both in you and the human who dares to protect you." Cale stepped slightly in front of Alara, his stance firm. "Potential for what?" he asked. "For change," the vampire said. "For balance. The curse that binds your clan, it was meant to control, to limit. But sometimes, the unexpected, courage, loyalty, love, can break centuries of tradition." Alara blinked. She had never thought of herself as powerful. She had always felt small, fragile, bound by rules she did not choose. Yet this vampire spoke as if she could change everything. Could she? The vampire's eyes softened as they fell on her. "Ilara, the choices you make now will decide the fate of your kind, and perhaps the human world as well. Will you hide in fear, or rise in courage?" Cale's hand brushed hers, a silent reminder that she was not alone. The warmth of his touch strengthened her resolve. "We rise," he said simply, his voice unwavering. The vampire nodded, as if approving the answer. "Very well, but know this, the path ahead is dangerous. You will face the council, the shadow above the city, and the remnants of a curse older than your memory. Only together can you survive." Suddenly, the shadows shifted, and the low rumble of movement echoed through the cathedral. Figures emerged, vampires of the council watching with silent judgment. Their expressions were cold, calculating. They had come to see if Alara's courage could truly withstand the trials. The leader of the council stepped forward, a figure wrapped in black robes with eyes that gleamed like onyx. "Fledgling," he said, voice like thunder, "you have drawn attention, you have broken protocol, and yet you have survived. That alone is remarkable." Ilara squared her shoulders. "I did what I had to," she said, voice firm. "I will not hide from what I am." The council leader studied her for a long moment, then smiled faintly. "Perhaps you are more than we expected." The tension in the room was thick, a silent storm waiting to break. Cale glanced at Alara, and she nodded, ready to face whatever was coming. The council members did not attack. Instead, they watched, testing the fledgling, testing the human. Then, without warning, a sudden movement from the shadows revealed the source of the distant threat, the ancient shadow that had followed them. It was a vampire unlike any Ilara had known, older and more powerful, radiating a dark, magnetic energy that made the stone walls tremble. "You dare challenge centuries of rules?" the shadow hissed, voice echoing like rolling thunder. Ilara stepped forward. "I do not wish to challenge. I wish to change." The shadow paused, as if surprised by the audacity of her words. "Change?" it said slowly. "Humans and fledglings cannot alter what has been written." Cale gripped her hand tightly. "Maybe not alone," he said, "but together they can." Ilara drew a deep breath, feeling the courage that had grown in her over the past nights. She focused on the bond she felt with Cale, the strength that came from facing fear together. She felt the ancient power within her stir, not violent or cruel, but protective, determined, and pure. With a gesture, she summoned the light that had been buried inside her. A glow that pulsed with warmth and resolve. The council in the shadow recoiled slightly, startled by the fledgling's unexpected strength. "Enough!" she said, her voice steady and commanding. "I will not hide. I will not cower. I will not allow fear to dictate my life. This city, your rules, they do not define me, and neither will you." The shadow paused, then slowly inclined its head. Something in its posture shifted. Curiosity, respect, and perhaps recognition of a force long forgotten. Cale smiled faintly at her. "See," he whispered, "courage isn't about being fearless. It's about standing anyway." Ilara felt warmth rush through her chest. For the first time, she truly believed it. She was more than the curse, more than the fear. She could shape her own destiny. The council members exchanged glances, then stepped back. Their judgment was not gone, but it had softened. Perhaps for the first time in centuries, they had seen a fledgling defy expectation, not through power alone, but through bravery and alliance. The ancient shadow lingered, then spoke once more. "You have potential, fledgling, and human. You may yet surprise me. But remember, change carries responsibility. Every choice will ripple through the city, through the clans, and beyond." Ilara nodded. "I understand." The shadow faded into the mist, leaving a silence filled with possibility. The council retreated, leaving the cathedral empty, save for Ilara and Cale. They exhaled together, relief and exhaustion mingling. The weight of fear had not vanished, but it had been tempered by hope. "You did it," Cale said softly, brushing rain from her cloak. "You faced them all." Ilara looked up at him, a small, tired smile on her lips. "We did it," she corrected. "Together." The city outside was waking. Dawn spread over the rooftops, turning the streets silver and gold. The mists began to lift, revealing a city still filled with danger, but also possibility. Ilara knew challenges would come again, as they always did. But now she had strength, courage, and someone by her side who would face the darkness with her. As they stepped out of the cathedral, the first rays of sunlight touched Ilara's face. Normally, the sun would burn her, forcing her to retreat. But something had changed. The light felt softer, warmer, a promise of a future that was hers to choose. Cale glanced at her. "It's beautiful," he said, "and so are you." Ilara's heart skipped a beat. She had never felt beauty in the light before, never felt worthy of admiration. And yet, here it was, shared between them, simple and profound. They walked through the city together, aware that the shadows had not vanished, that the council and the ancient forces were still watching. But for the first time, Ilara felt ready, not just to survive, but to live, to change, to love. And somewhere above, in the remnants of night and shadow, the city seemed to hum in approval, as if acknowledging that a new chapter had begun. A chapter of courage, of hope, and of a fledgling vampire who had dared to rise. Ilara and Cale shared a glance, a silent understanding passing between them. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The city, the council, the shadows. They could wait. For now, they had each other, and that was enough.